I'm waking up to ash and dust. I wipe my brow and I sweat my rust.
The country's largest group of pediatricians says many of our kids need to start school later in the morning. John?
Vanita, this new report by the American Academy of Pediatrics points out that middle and high school students who don't get enough sleep can suffer physical and mental problems. Their studies can suffer too.
The new school year in Warrington, Virginia means an early start time for 16-year-old Kaya Olson. Classes here begin at 7:30 a.m.
We all showed up to school on the first day and all complained about how tired we were as soon as we walked in the door.
Only 13% of high school students get the optimal amount of sleep. That's 8.5 to 9.5 hours. The American Academy of Pediatrics believes this contributes to obesity, high blood pressure, and depression. Dr. Judith Owens is the lead author of the policy statement.
Getting less sleep is associated with poorer grades, with lower performance on standardized tests. So across the board, we see a whole host of very negative consequences.
The advisory panel suggests middle and high schools start their day no earlier than 8:30 a.m. It's estimated only 15% of high schools start at 8:30 a.m. or later. 40% start earlier than 8 a.m. We asked Kaya to keep a video diary documenting her struggles to get to sleep and wake up.
It's 6 a.m. and I just woke up after hitting my snooze button 3 times.
I'm only going to be able to go to school with 6, maybe 5 hours of sleep, and I'm not ready to learn and take tests and everything because I'm so tired. And then that stresses me out because I want good grades, but I'm tired.
Kaya's mother, Judy, believes changing start times would also change attitudes.
Every morning this week, she said to me, I hate school, I don't want to go to school. I don't think it's school that they hate. I think they hate getting up and getting out the door before 7 o'clock in the morning.
So it's not just fatigue, there's some medical consequences here.
Right, we heard about all the medical consequences in the piece, and it wasn't just obesity and depression, high blood pressure, and not doing well in school, but things like increased infections, not to mention crankiness, which I think we all see. And I think the thinking about sleeping has really changed. It's very interesting. We used to think you just sort of turned off, maybe you did some dreaming, that did something. But now we're finding out that during sleep we're repairing hormones, so a lot of the hormones that control appetite get reset. And that's why if you don't get enough sleep, you can eat more.
Right.
And in terms of infections, your immune system gets repaired. So there are a lot of things going on in sleep that we don't really totally understand, but that are important.
I have 2 teenagers. Right. The enduring problem at this point in their lives is I can't get them to go to sleep, and then I can't get them to wake up.
Right.
But my question is...
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you very much. My question is, why do they have trouble going to sleep at night?
Lots of things, but one of them that's physiologic is that when you hit puberty, your circadian rhythm, your biological clock changes, and you naturally go to bed later. Now, in addition to that, you have things like screen use. So we've learned now that the light coming from these electronic devices can inhibit melatonin, which is a hormone made in the brain that helps you go to sleep. Not to mention all the homework. I mean, my kids just had homework that kept them up later than I went to sleep.
Some new momentum for parents hoping to move back the starting time for high schools in one of our area's largest school systems.
All right, in Anne Arundel County, they start school at 7:17. High school start at 7. That's the earliest in any county in the state. ABC 2 News' Christian Schaefer in the newsroom tonight with an update on the push to let the kids sleep in a little longer.
Yeah, Jamie Kelly, this week the school system in Fairfax County, Virginia is putting options on the table to move its starting time back from 7:20 in the morning. Now, Fairfax County schools have more than twice as many kids as Anne Arundel's. Parents say if they can do it there, why not Anne Arundel? Governor O'Malley is also calling for a study on just how early is too early.
The alarm in Amelia Avis's room goes off when it's still dark outside.
I generally wake up at 5:45 to give me just enough time to get there, but if I sleep in for 5 minutes, I can be pushing it.
That's because the bell at Annapolis High School and every high school in Anne Arundel County rings at 7:17 in the morning. She's okay for most of the day, but
at just 1 or 2 p.m., it kind of hits us and we go, oh, and All my friends have felt that feeling.
For the past several months, a task force has been meeting to talk about ways to push back the starting time in the county's high schools. Amelia's mother is on it.
We don't need to imagine anymore what would happen if we started school later than 7:17. We can look at districts that have made the change and really see what happens.
In Anne Arundel County, the same buses that bring high school students to school turn around and deliver the middle school students and then the elementary school students, so change will not be easy.
It's a very complicated web, and there are domino effects all over the place.
That includes dismissal times, after-school activities, and part-time jobs. Plus,
if you just moved high school start times back to 8 o'clock, for example, which is something that's gotten a lot of the attention. That comes with an $8 million price tag.
In the D.C. area, the Children's National Medical Center is working with Fairfax County Schools as its leaders decide whether to start schools later. The hospital has also testified on the issue here in our state. It's found that early high school start times are associated with poor academic performance, poor attendance, and a higher rate of accidents and injuries.
I think creativity and the willingness to solve this problem and the right tools to do it will be the key to making this happen.
It's a revolution.
Thousands of local children headed back to school. A new study says many of them should be starting class later. The American Academy of Pediatrics says school for middle and high school students should be delayed until at least 8:30 in the morning. 8:30. The study says it's a matter of health and concentration. Local 12's Paula Toti is here to tell us educators have heard the arguments before, but it doesn't mean you should reset the alarm. Not just yet, right, Paula?
Right, Cammie. Cincinnati Public Schools actually has two start times, 7:45 and 9. Some of those early times are for the high school and middle school students. It has to do with double routing buses. That saves millions of dollars. But even with that issue aside, change would not be so easy.
The study on kids and sleep says school students should get 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep a night and suggests starting school later would reduce chronic sleep loss linked to poor health. Cincinnati Public Schools Superintendent Mary Ronan says she's sympathetic to the study, but aside from even the issue of bus routes, moving start times is complicated business.
And I know my daughter would like a little more sleep in the morning, but then you also have to look at the logistics of working families. If the high school student gets home later than the elementary child, they're unable to babysit for their younger sibling, and that impacts your two working families.
But another mom with kids the age of the study group feels it's worth the complication to make the changes. Hamilton County Coroner Dr. Lakshmi Samarko says it's not just a matter of getting enough sleep. Young adults really have a different body clock.
And it's with puberty hormonal shifts, the changes in their bodies, that they just naturally tend to not wake up as well until about an hour later, about 8, somewhere in that 8 to 9 period.
Dr. Samarko says there was a petition drive in her kids' district a few years ago asking for later start times that didn't go anywhere. But she says when you look at studies pointing to the best time to take a test, it's 10 a.m.
You're awake and you've had a chance to wake up and your hormones are responding appropriately.
In Cincinnati Public, parents actually have seemed more against late start times, with many students needing after-school jobs.
We would never just make some kind of change because of a research report without really talking to our families and say, would this work for you?
I asked the superintendent about maybe having classes like PE early in the morning. You know, you can get out and stretch and start to wake up, and those really hard math classes later. And she said that might make some sense. Now, certainly this idea of sleep deprivation carries on into college, Cammie. I mean, I remember those math classes. I was like this. That's why I'm here, you know.
Yes, I get it. And I have one at Miami now, one at UC. Today was the first day of classes for both. Yeah. And I asked them how it went, and they both said, it was so hard to get up. You know, they're used to sleeping in.
Well, and Dr. Samarko worries that, you know, that's going to have a lot of people reaching for coffee in the really young years. And, you know, not the worst habit, the caffeine, but maybe something they wouldn't need otherwise.
Yeah. What about parents who make the argument, well, you know, the kids can catch up on their sleep on the weekend?
doesn't really work. It might help a little bit.
This morning, the nation's largest group of pediatricians says many of our kids need to start school later in the morning. The new report by the American Academy of Pediatrics points out that middle and high school students who don't get enough sleep can suffer physical and mental health problems. Their studies, it says, can suffer too. Dr. Carol Ash is Director of Sleep Medicine at Meridian Health. That's in New Jersey. Hello, good to see you again, Dr. Carol Ash.
Yeah.
Well, instead of saying starting school later, why don't you say to kids, hey, go to bed earlier?
You know, Gail, this is a real problem. I mean, it's a serious epidemic amongst our kids. Their physiology is different. They really have a challenge trying to go to bed earlier. So we have to be mindful of that and do what we can to facilitate getting them to bed.
So going to bed early wouldn't work when you say their physiology is different. What do you mean?
Well, what happens is adults, after prolonged hours of wakefulness, our brain will start to slow us down so that we'll get into bed at a certain hour. That system in them is slower, so they tend to have a delayed time to bed naturally. So they respond differently to us too, also in terms of the sleep loss. That's another physiologic issue that they have, and they need more sleep. So those three things.
Well, as a parent of two teenagers, I can tell you the dilemma is you can't get them to go to bed, and then you can't get them to wake up. But one of the things you suggest, and I know it's true because I've seen it happen, is imposing a technology curfew.
Yes, absolutely. You know, we used to say, where are your kids? You know, they're worried about them being out in the neighborhood. Nowadays, the electronics, they're socially connected, so they're texting till all hours of the night, and those electronics will keep the brain engaged, as well as the light can limit the release of melatonin that helps you transition into sleep. So the electronics are a problem, so you want to get them out of the bedroom if you can.
And I know we see it over here around the corner. They're lining up at Starbucks. Like, there are teenagers ordering, you know, grande macchiatos and the whole bit.
And the caffeine is a problem, too, because actually it becomes a circle. They take the caffeine in the morning, that disrupts sleep. The caffeine leads to risk-taking behavior, and it also can cause problems with addiction of other things.
So how much do they need?
Well, they need, usually school-age kids, they need 9 to 10 hours of sleep. Whoa. And Gail, when they're not getting it, it causes problems, not only with their school performance, but we've shown health risks, obesity, depression, anxiety, drowsy driving, and the caffeine. They'll drink caffeine more.
Thank you, Dr. Cross. We can all agree. We all need more sleep, right? Across the board.
Keeps on fighting. It keeps on.
I'm the lead author on the new American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations, and these focus on delaying school start times for both high school and middle school students as a way of addressing the nationwide problem of chronic sleep loss in adolescents. So I think the takeaways from these recommendations and also in general for parents include the following. Number one, sleep is critically important to health, safety, performance, and well-being of all of us, but in particular of teenagers. And we know that the average teenager in the United States does not get anywhere near the amount of sleep that they need on a regular basis. So we have very good scientific evidence that the average teenager needs between 8.5 and 9.5 hours of sleep per night. We also know that by the time they're seniors in high school, they're typically getting less than 7 hours. So the second thing after recognizing the importance of sleep to health, safety, and performance is knowing the numbers. So parents need to recognize that their teenagers need around 9 hours of sleep. And that's the reason that these recommendations came out, because there are also, and this is the third point, some very important changes in what we call circadian rhythms that occur in conjunction with puberty rather than with
chronological age. So as teenagers go into puberty, they have this natural biological shift in their sleep patterns. So the average teenager can't fall asleep much before 11 p.m. So if they need 9 hours of sleep, you do the math, that means that they are best suited to wake at about 8 o'clock. And that's well after many high schools have started.